Hi guys, Dr. Smith here. I'm your instructor for this online class, which is North American Prehistory here at Portland State for fall of 2013. And I thought I'd go over just briefly today in this first video some of the sort of class mechanics. Essentially, this is a survey of the pre-contact, mostly pre-contact period in North American prehistory, or North American or the history of Native American people. We call it pre-contact typically because, rather than prehistory, because there was a history of people here, and so the term prehistory suggests that the opposite, that these people didn't have a history, but they did, of course. Pre-contact simply refers to what life was like before the contact era, and of course that's the late 1400s in the southeast of the United States or North America, and the late 1700s, for example, here on the northwest coast. The northwest coast happens to be my particular area of specialty, and I'll be describing many times the kind of archaeology that we've been working on here at Portland State University. We're going to proceed largely geographically, and the North America has been divided by anthropologists looking at linguistic and ecological sort of boundaries or regions of North America. This is going to be Canada essentially and the United States, and we'll touch on a little bit of going into Mexico, but then we get into Mesoamerica, meso meaning middle. This area has been divided up geographically and linguistically and so forth into about 12 major culture regions. For example, the northwest coast, from the panhandle of Alaska down to northern California, and including at least half of Oregon, roughly. This area has its own distinctive characteristics. It's rather different than, for example, the desert Southwest. That region itself, geographically bounded, has certain characteristics that drove different adaptations and different lifestyles for people in that area. So we'll proceed rather geographically. We'll go through these different places: the Arctic, the northwest coast, the desert Southwest, the Mississippi region, and so on. What we'll do through the course is typically, used to use a textbook for this, but now I find that really no textbook really does what I want to do, and enough of what I want to do in this class. And so instead what I'm going to do is I'll be putting a number of research papers online for you, and those research papers are going to include a wide variety of material from quite different topics. There will be some that refer to, or some that go over, let's say, technical issues in how sites were excavated, archaeological sites. Some will be ethnographic accounts, legends, and so on of native people. What I'm trying to do is put together a portrait showing you the different kinds of evidence that people have used to reconstruct what life was like in pre-contact times. There were, of course, native people here whose oral traditions go back centuries and sometimes even into millennia, and those oral traditions we'll also be reading about. But a large part of the class is archaeology, and that's typically the history written in objects like this. Here's a stone tool made by people here on the lower Columbia River. This is something excavated here by our research project. And you'll be also learning then a lot about the archaeology. Having said all of that, there might actually be a text which should be rather cheap, less than $40, I think. There might be a text that we use sort of as a guide, but there will be, in addition to that, I'm going to make that decision tonight. This is Sunday night, the night before the first class. I'm going to make that decision tonight, and it'll be on the syllabus and everything. That textbook would be rather cheap. You won't have to pay for any of the files that I put online. These will be PDF files. So each week we'll have a sort of this culture region we're looking at, some PDF readings, and perhaps a reading from the chapter, from the text, appropriate chapters of the text. I also weekly put on sort of a recap. So I'll talk into my mic here when I'm at my office. I'll talk into this recording device, and then I upload that digital file, and that's something that you can just listen to whenever you want. And that's sort of a recap. Okay, you've read this material, and maybe I've put some links. I'll put a lot of video links on of things on YouTube, interesting videos that are appropriate to what we're studying. And then I'll sort of recap it all. And these are, I find students like this quite a lot because it gives you, well, you can be washing the dishes, you can be doing whatever you like, and you can still be listening and getting kind of a recap of what I was after for the whole week. We'll start out by doing a number of weekly essays to sort of let me see where you are in your writing and where you are in the understanding of the material. I tend to do those for a few weeks, then we'll taper it off, and we'll do sort of a midterm paper, and then we'll go into the final period. And at the final period, either we'll do a final paper or sort of, well, there are a couple of other options, and I'll be putting those together on the syllabus tonight. So these are essentially the course mechanics. This is an overview of the culture regions of the pre-contact period, and you'll learn a great deal about native people in the Arctic to the desert Southwest. The California area basically is its own sort of region, the Mississippian region, and further east. One of the things that you're going to find is that there's a tremendous diversity of native people. When we think of native people, oftentimes, if we haven't had a class like this, then we'll think, for example, of teepees or people out on the plains. Well, yes, those existed, but of course there were people in the high Arctic in this completely different lifestyle. There were people in the desert Southwest, the people in what is today, for example, Nevada, the Paiute people. And then there were people even further south who have agriculture, and they have contacts with late on, they have contacts, for example, with Aztec civilization in Mesoamerica. The main point then is that there's a tremendous diversity in what we call, or when we say Native American or Indian populations. There was a tremendous diversity there, and it's fascinating. That's why to take the class, so that you have a better understanding. Like I say, my work, most of my research here for the past 20 years at Portland State has been with what's called the Wapato Valley Archaeology Project, where we have been investigating the archaeology of what are called sedentary foragers, hunter-gatherers, who lived in the Willamette or the Wapato Valley, right here in metropolitan Portland and around this area. And you'll be reading a lot about that excavation, or those excavations, and our analysis of that material. That's work I've been doing with Ken Ames, Professor Emeritus now, since I came to Portland State in 1991 as a master's student. Then I went away and did a doctorate at Simon Fraser University in Canada, and then came back to PSU as an instructor. And so I'll be talking a lot about, or you'll learn a lot about the close-in region here in the Portland metropolitan region, archaeology and the pre-contact archaeology of this area. All right? That's pretty much what I wanted to do, is just say briefly hello today, and tomorrow I'll start uploading everything onto the site and give you your first week's readings and assignments. All right, I think that's it. I will talk to you tomorrow.